Good morning, Mr. Hering. Guten Tag. It's a pleasure to get the opportunity to talk to you again after a while, I should say.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really great to be here again.
You're definitely an intellectual of high caliber, and not only because you're a very experienced economist and journalist by profession, but because you have inspired thousands of people through your books and lectures on the implications of the abolition of caste and the way a more holistic society is being built step by step, year by year, worldwide. It will be a pleasure to spend the next 30 minutes or so to get some of your wisdom in a package.
Thank you. It's very kind.
Here in Greece, the new national electronic identity cards have been announced from the present government, and as I know, they are already been running in Germany for some time, and we have the usual concerns that not only for Greece but for worldwide. Where are things going in terms of surveillance, in terms of human rights, and whether such a system, not just the card per se, that will also contain an RFID chip, but the entire system that is run behind the card with access to personal information, from health information to inland revenue information. Tomorrow it could be a digital wallet as well, so the banking information. So all our life accessed through a card on interconnected databases. Maybe I would like to give you some space to talk about your new book, which is currently only in German, and I do hope that we can have it translated into English and Greek soon enough.
Thank you. It's called The Endgame of Capitalism. It's about how capitalism works, which not many people understand anymore, because we're made to believe that there is basically nothing else, and economy is capitalist economy, but that's not true. So we have to talk about what capitalism is, and the defining feature is that money leaves all the companies and goes to somebody who basically doesn't have anything to do with the company and is just an owner. And I'm talking about the financial system that supports that is very, very important for enforcing all the things that go with capitalism. And I'm talking about how we're running into into big problems, or capitalism is running into problems, and that we're in the end game, and what we are trying to get to, which I think is some neo-feudalistic surveillance and control society. Also has to do with the fact that natural resources are not enough. So the idea is to put everybody on a basic income, most people worldwide, so that they can survive, and that they're under control, because they have to be under control to get that income. They have to be where they're supposed to be, otherwise they won't get it, and that way they won't consume a lot of resources. And but it requires a lot of control. That's the topic, and I came to that from my research on cash and the dangers for cash, which I wrote 2 books on that, because in 2014 I started to realize there's something going on. They want to get rid of cash, now that seems pretty clear. At the time, there were only some first indications, so I wrote about that. And from there, I came to the realization that this is just part of something bigger, of getting us under control digitally, basically, and like making everything digital, because that means you can it can be controlled by an algorithm, and that's the general idea, and that's where also the digital ID cards and the unique identification numbers that we seem to be getting at come in, because that's a big part of this program.
Thank you for mentioning that, because there is actually a clear distinction between two different things here. There is a unique identification number, as you call it very correctly, which is also will be shortly be issued in Greece as well. It's a worldwide trend, but you know, the trigger point was to speak about the Greek national IDs, but it's a worldwide effect. And we're also worried about that because there will be just a single number which is addressing everything, and then you have you don't have a number, you don't have a person, you have a number, and the control of through global surveillance is provided immediately by identifying a unique number. And on the other hand, we have the digital world and the electronic ID, which is you know, a national identity card in the past was used just for identification. So I have a card, maybe I'm a police officer or I'm a public servant. I look into the card, I check the details, whether they're matching your face, I'm asking you your name, and that's it. There is no, first, there is no record of that. Yeah, so there is no traceability of that event. Secondly, it's just checking on identification. So we are moving through this electronic national ID card from identification to access on services or from provided publicly from the government, and possibly tomorrow also on private services. So not only public sector services, but private services. And that will be done throughout a holistic surveillance system where all your movements will be recorded. A lot of people claim, well, they will not be recorded. The card is used only every now and then, and there is no GPS, so don't worry about it. And that is an argument which is used a lot from people that are standing for the card, not the people standing against the card. So what would you say to them? Due to the fact that there is no GPS tracking on the card, that makes it okay? Do you think that's a given argument?
Yeah. It works for a while, and you can always say that it's not so bad, these digital cards, but it's very clear that the strategy is to go piecemeal, to just go in little steps, because there's always a lot of resistance to the big steps in going digital and making you traceable. That has always had many protests against it, and actually the idea of a unique number for everybody that is used for everything has been ruled unconstitutional in basically every country where it came up to the courts, including Germany and France and England. They have very big lobby groups that are pushing for exactly that, very powerful groups, including like the Gates Foundation, Microsoft, Rockefeller Foundation, World Economic Forum, you name it. They have that ID 2020 initiative. They're cooperating heavily with governments and international organizations. All organizations, they should know that it's basically against all constitutions, because it's extremely dangerous. It means that if you have a unique ID that you use for everything, it means all the information about your life comes together in that number, and it doesn't mean if it's stored in one database or if in many different ones that are interlinked. If they're linked, it means that you can be very easily surveyed, that on a worldwide level, that's being done in Langley and Fort Meade in the US by the NSA, and mostly NSA and CIA. We know since Snowden that it is the program of the NSA to store everything about everybody in the whole world. So that's what's being enabled by that, that you can, just from your computer in Fort Meade, where the NSA is, you can get the information about anybody anywhere, and you can store it. And if it's encrypted, you can still store it, and you can be sure that in 10 years or whenever you will be able to decrypt it and read it, and it will still be interesting. But most of it is not even encrypted. So that's the big goal where they're going at. And you can see, I'm not an expert of the Greek situation, but it's similar in Germany. We got an ID card, and then they put electronic functions on it, which you had to opt in, which nobody did. So they changed it, and now it's automatically on, but still not many people are using it. So now they are kind of forcing you to use it for a lot of different things, where you get money from the government. They just make it so that you have to use your digital ID card functions, so that it's used more and more. And we have a citizen number now, which comes from the tax, which it was explicitly promised that it would never be used for that, when they just changed their mind, and now it's a citizen number, which is to be used for everything having to do with the government. So that's already halfway to a unique ID that's used for everyone. And the EU is saying they want that. They want to provide a unique number that is used for everything, including your dealings with private companies and everything. So it's clearly unconstitutional, but they just do it in a piecemeal way, so that citizens first don't scream and don't go to the streets, and that they have no way of going to the courts and interdicting it, because it hasn't happened yet, and it goes small step by small step. And that's clearly the strategy, and that's what's going to happen in Greece too. I'm sure of it.
It is happening already. This step-by-step, meal. We call it, the salami way. You slice the salami little by little. A decade ago, they were saying, "Oh, don't worry, there will be no chip on the card." And I personally, with a committee, went to see the minister at the time, and his people were defending, "Don't worry, you have to wait and see the technical details first, and don't jump into conclusions." And the formal and informal set has been that little by little, they add into the entire story, and they also changing their story or changing the mind in the way you describe. So I'm astonished it's happening in Germany. I thought that in Greece we were the champions, as far as at least the government is concerned, to say A and tomorrow turn it into B, C, or D. So I'm surprised it's happening in Germany as well. And I think listening to you very carefully on what you described in Germany, I think part of it's already happening in Greece. So for a moment, I thought you were speaking about Greece, not Germany. And interestingly
it's
enough,
the same everywhere, because it's international coordinated. I mean, these initiatives like ID 2020 are very big, have organizations with very much money and power behind them, like the World Bank and the IMF. And so and they cooperate with groups like the G20, where all the governments sit together, and with the standard setters in these groups. So There's the standard setters like in G20 groups or groups affiliated with the G20 who make the financial standards, and these are very important. And there's no democratic control because these are informal groups, but they set very formal standards. And these standards say it's like totally important to be totally sure who everybody is. So we totally need unique digital identification numbers. This is sort of the way where they get to it. And this is how they get it into every nation, because through the bank oversight and financial oversight, it goes everywhere, and they're being pushed to make sure that there's going to be a digital ID, because otherwise their banks will have problems if they can't keep up to the standards with Know Your Customer, or their friends at the G20 will look at them in a funny way. So they're all doing it, and we're all doing it the same way. And you can be sure that there's some people sitting in those think tanks affiliated with them who have thought about exactly that strategy of how to go ahead. And there's I learned from my cash research. There was a paper by the International Money Fund on decashing, on getting rid of cash, that is actually very explicitly talking about the strategy of how you say one thing and you go a little way so that you don't have too much resistance, and then you lower that threshold over time so that people just get used to it first and don't notice. You don't usually get to see these papers, but you can be sure there's plenty of them in the background, and that's why everybody does the same.
Thank you very much, Norbert. That is for touching, in fact, all the sensitive issues of what is at stake here in the digital world, and more especially on how an electronic national ID can be used. I would like to switch a little bit now to a very relevant topic, which is in fact the digital euro, which will be introduced very shortly. So all this work that you have been doing for years, what you have been evangelizing, that we will end up in a cashless society, it seems that it's now indeed very close, right?
Right. They still claim that that's not their goal, and that's not what's happening. They say they want to introduce the digital euro just to as an addition to cash. But when you look closely, you see that it's really meant to substitute cash and push it away further. You can see that from the fact that they want to include a lot of functions that are now basically the main functions of cash. If you see somebody face to face and you pay him, you can do that with cash, and that's where cash is strong. If you want to be anonymous, that's what you're gonna do, and it's easy and it doesn't cost a lot. So that's the main use case of cash, and they want to make the digital euro such that it can be used in that case. That there's a function that you have some device and the other side has a device too, and you're face to face and you can still pay digitally. There's no need to do that except if you want to have a substitute to cash and push it away further. They make some exceptions from the usual know your customer rules for digital payments, so that it can be quasi-anonymous, which they normally don't do. They don't make these exceptions, but they make it in order to create a substitute to cash and to sort of lure people into thinking, oh, it's safe and quasi-anonymous, I can do that. Why would they do it? And it becomes very clear when you look at the proposed laws that they were making, one for the suggesting now, one for the digital euro and one for cash, saying what it means that it's legal tender. The digital euro is supposed to be legal tender too. And for the digital euro, they want to make a rule that requires everybody to take it except for very small businesses, and explicitly prohibits them to say in their now, how do you call it? Not sure how you call it now in English, in their rules, that they can say with a sign at the door, we don't accept the digital euro. You can do that with cash now, and so it's meant to be. You still can decide. It's a mutual agreement. If you see that sign and you walk in the door, you are agreeing to not be able to pay with cash, and that's fine with you, because otherwise you don't need to go into that business. They want to keep that for cash, so that you can do that. You can put a sign there and say we're not accepting cash, but they want to explicitly prohibit that for the digital euro. So why would that be? Why do they do that for the digital euro, but not for cash? And they force everybody to who deals with it to basically subsidize payments in the digital euro that they don't do for cash. So it's quite clear to me that they care a lot more for the digital euro than for cash. And I've learned I had a court case that went to the European court about the right to pay in cash, and I learned that the EU Commission and the ECB are very clearly anti-cash, and that they were arguing the other side. And so, but whatever the EU Commission says and pretends to do to protect cash, I consider window dressing, because they can't openly say we want to get rid of cash, so they pretend, but they do want to get rid of cash.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And at the end of the day, the way I understand it, they try to give incentives for whether you're buying something, a product or a service. If you don't use cash, you get some better pricing. So they give incentives all the time. Do you think that inevitably a national ID could be also the electronic wallet, or access to your electronic wallet and the digital euro?
Yes, it goes together. I mean, it doesn't have to be the national ID, but they do want a unique identification number, which they also want to do on the European level. So your ID on your wallet will be used for your access to the digital euro, and that will mean that basically all the information comes together.
That doesn't sound very appealing. So maybe a last question, and thank you very much for making time today. And it was difficult because you're about to start your vacation. Maybe a last question. How do you foresee life in Europe, or indeed in the world, 5 or 10 years from now? If we are going to abolish cash completely, if everything goes digital, what life is it going to be? And more especially for the people that will refuse entering this way of life?
Well, the blueprint is clearly what we see in China. That's sort of social credit kind of thing. I mean, we already, there's a lot of very fine ways of control possible once you have that programmable money, and it's going to be programmable. the ECB says it's not going to be programmable, but that's only true for the digital euro itself if it becomes true. But there is a platform on which this money goes together with other monies, with the usual bank money. And on that platform level, it's going to be programmable. That's the blueprint of the Bank for International Settlements. So that is not what I'm saying. It's the blueprint for the new system. So they can basically control everything with an algorithm, and they can do these things that they're now doing in a very crude way. They did it in Canada, that they blocked people's accounts if they were dealing with protesters. There's all these account blockages in Germany and internationally by people who are anti-government journalists who are off mainstream and are very critical of the government. They get their accounts blocked, they get blocked on social media. All these sorts of things can be done in a much more nuanced way, and you can get your score and you can get your restrictions depending on that score. So that's what I'm telling people who say, I have nothing to fear, I have nothing to hide. And it's true for most people, 99% of the people. Nobody has much interest in controlling them in a very bad. Okay, they get their advertisements and stuff, they get surveyed for that, but it doesn't really hurt them very much. But it means we're living in a society eventually where everybody's controlled, including the people who would normally stick their heads out for them and fight for them and their freedoms. And they will not be able to do that anymore because everybody's controlled. And that's why they should be afraid. This is where we are heading. But of course, it's not all bad, because otherwise I wouldn't write anymore and try to prevent it, because this all depends on the majority of people supporting it. And they do. They believe capitalism is without alternative because they don't see any alternative anymore.
Yeah.
And they believe that the government means well, and that whatever power they will get, they will use in a benign way, and all that. Most people believe that, and that's why that works. But it doesn't have to stay that way, and there's already a lot of people who are trying, who are withdrawing from that kind of economy and from that kind of social machine where that has lost its purpose and is sort of running by itself. A lot of people are withdrawing, and that is the most likely way how it will end if people start to mistrust the governments and the powers that whatever they are. And it's not going to end with the forks and guns on the street. It's going to end with people walking away and saying, I don't want to do this. And you already see it with, there's a lot of complaints about Generation Z, about the young generation, about how they don't want to work anymore and they don't want to progress anymore. They have a little more power because there's people missing, and they say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to work 4 hours, 4 days a week, not 5. And I don't want to kill myself in order to get ahead. It's fine. I don't need so much money. So that's a very good development. And I see like more of that, even if some of it might seem decadent and not very constructive by itself, but that general movement of it crumbling, it will look ugly and not constructive when the social machine crumbles, but I kind of like the signs of seeing it crumble.
Well, Norbert, what can I say? I think as long as there are people like you, I think there is still hope, because you are very subjective on your assessment. You put all the facts in a very rigid way. And I think people reading your work or listening to you can always be inspired to understand that there are alternatives, and who knows, we might even be able to reverse the way things are going and go through better days. So
thank you, and I'm also very glad that there's people like you who work on that and really dedicate themselves to make the world better. That's great.
Dankeschön. Well, coming from you, I have to take this very seriously. So,
okay, thank you.
Dankeschön, auf Wiedersehen, and all the best.